Living well is being able to experience all these beauties that are before us. Living well is not being afraid to speak your mind. Living well is being able to receive. Living well is being able to share. That I think that's what it's like.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick Rodell. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Chef Curtis Aikens. Chef Curtis is a former host and founding chef of the Food Network, mentored by Julia Chow, Chef Paul Prudhomme, the Green Grocer, Joe Carcione, and Edna Lewis. He is one of the few chefs featured in Julia Chow's kitchen at the Smithsonian. After learning to read at age 26 through Literacy Volunteers of America and the Marin County Free Library, Chef Curtis has authored 7 books sharing his passion for the culinary world, along with his personal journey of struggle and success. Curtis has hosted shows for ABC and been featured on major networks including CNN, NBC, and CBS. He has hosted 7 shows for Food Network and made live appearances around the world. Chef Curtis has been invited as a guest chef at the White House for 3 sitting presidents, both Democrat and Republican. He currently lives in Novato, California, with his fiancée Lisa, and runs a garden and culinary program for the Marin County Cooperation Team in Sausalito and Marin City. Chef Curtis's personal motto is spread love. How you doing, Curtis?
I'm great. I'm great. I love that you started with that. This is kind of I'm working up a new patch to go on all my chef coats. And I don't know if I like the black background. I do love the heart and the spread love. So when you said that, it brings a warm smile, not only to my face, but to my soul. So it's great to be
Awesome.
with you, Broderick. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of your podcast.
Awesome. I'm excited for this conversation. I just love how those of you who haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to go and see some of Curtis's videos on YouTube. He always ends with spread love. I just love that.
That
That's
that
the goal here. I think
is
ultimate goal here in this podcast is to spread love and encourage more love in the world. So this is you're the right person to be having this conversation with.
Thank you so much. It's funny when people read that bio or share the bio, and I think, wow, did I really do all that stuff? I mean, if I hadn't lived the life that I'm living, I would think I would think he's lying. However, the stuff you read, I'm like, wow, I forget about some of those things. But yeah, it's so I'm very happy to be part of this beautiful podcast that you've got going. So listen, I could talk forever. So you run the show. Let me answer your questions. And I
Yeah.
love your smile, brother. Like boom, it's like the
Appreciate it,
bomb.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you too, man. That's
Thank
that's what we have together mutually. That
Amen.
smiling, and
Amen.
yeah, that's what it's
Amen.
about.
Yeah.
So I know I just read that bio, but like you said, I like for guests to give a little brief introduction to themselves. Just say a little bit about yourself and how you feel about who you are today.
Yeah. Who I am today, I'm ever evolving, like everyone. I think. I hope that the day that I'm called home, that I will have given several hugs during that day, and I hope that I've made some people smile. And I mean, that's what I try to do. I mean, I just really. I say to folks, and I don't say this in a flippant way or anything. I truly mean that I'm the most blessed person you're probably ever going to meet. I'm just extremely fortunate. I share with folks that I think I'm like the Forrest Gump of the food world. When I talk about the people I've had a chance to meet and work with, when I was a little boy in Georgia, not knowing how to read, going through school, I think like I dreamt of being able to travel the world, and now I have. So for those out there that are listening to us or watching us or however they're receiving this podcast, I tell people I don't dream anymore. I don't make dreams. I make plans. I figure
Mhm.
out what it is I want to do and I go. And that has all been able to happen since I learned to read. This morning, I'm sitting in Los Angeles to do the podcast with you before driving out to Pasadena. And I'm speaking with the California Association of Librarians, and this is the group that hosted that literacy volunteers group in Northern California where I learned to read. So they're celebrating their 40th year. And I was one of the early people to go through that program, LVA, at the Marin County Free Library. So I get a chance to speak with the statewide convention of librarians tonight. And I can't wait to thank them in person for all they've allowed me to receive. So yeah, I mean, I'm just a blessed brother. That's what I say. I'm a blessed brother.
I love it. That's great, man. I love that introduction. We jump right off in the beginning, and I'm sure some of those themes are going to come up in the rest of our conversation. Well, I suppose they would.
Yeah.
So, what does living well mean to you? And then we'll go from here. I know it's a big question to ask, but we'll unpack it as we go.
That is a huge question, and I hope over the next several minutes or hour that we're together that we can keep coming back to that theme. So, what does living well mean? It's interesting. I think I shared with you before we started recording that yesterday I visited San Quentin Prison in Northern California, and it was. I had some very apprehensive moments before going in, and our tour guide, an African American, a black woman, Lieutenant Barry, was incredible. And I shared with her right away that I early in my career I visited some incarcerated people, and I didn't connect. And this was 25 or 30 years ago, so there's a different mindset with rehabilitation. So, and I'm getting back to this question of living well. So when I see all these young brothers, older brothers, black, white, Asian, Pacific Islanders, I mean, it was seeing people locked up. It really gave me pause because I think like I really it made me go, okay, what are we doing as a society that we have to push people in this situation? What are we doing? And it was great to get the chance to talk with all these men and the people that worked in the Correction Institute. And California is leading the way with rehabilitation. I walked away from San Quentin thinking that I want to come back here. I want to be a part of this rehabilitation. And these four men, two black men, one gentleman from Hawaii, two brothers of Hispanic origin, and they shared their stories. They shared. So at the end of the presentation, they said, "Any questions?" I said, "Okay, as a person outside these walls, outside these fences, what can I do? What can we do to help you transition from incarceration to be back in the citizen?" And the gentleman said to me, and I quote, "Don't see me as my crime. See me as a human being." And I thought, that's what I want to do. That's what, and I said, and I tried to be as vulnerable with him and them as they were to us. I said, okay, I hear that. I see you doing the work. You're putting in the work. And as a person that believes in something bigger than me, bigger than we, I know we can all change, right? So as the person on the outside, how do we or are a victim of those crimes? How would you hope? How would you present that we can forgive you the way that our Heavenly Father, Allah, whoever you believe in, that superior being, how do we open you in society with open arms? And he says, please, let's have those conversations. I think that's the key to having a good life is those people that we don't know. We have to be able to say hello. Does that make sense? I mean, it's like, no one's a stranger after you say hello. When you say hello, hey, my name is, can we talk? Can we rap? Can we break bread? I mean, I do believe I don't just say spread love. I truly hope I live this life of spreading joy. Like I said, I can ramble, so you gotta reel me in sometimes like that fish. Okay, so if I go off that deep end, Broderick.
No, that's beautiful. I think that asking you that question and you're reflecting on your experience of these gentlemen incarcerated and seeing from their perspective, how do I like to be seen?
Yeah.
And seeing them as human beings and not just the crimes that they've committed. And I love how you come back to. I mean, a big piece of living well, it appears to you, and I think we can unpack this a little bit more, is seeing each other as human beings
Amen.
at our
Yes.
foundation,
That's
making a connection.
that's the that's the key.
Yeah, that's that love, right? You know, when you
Yeah.
say hello, there's a little bit of that distinction or that separation uh, diminishes a little bit when we open ourselves up to another person. We open the door to love when we
Right.
do that. So
Right.
yeah, that's great. Can you say a little bit more about that and like living well in this
Well, it's
and
interesting.
connecting like this?
Yeah, it's I I I think back to my mother and my father, and I didn't know my father's father. My name is Curtis George Aikens. I'm named for my both my grandfathers. My mother's dad's last name was Curtis. My father's dad's first name was George. So Curtis George Aikens. I'm a guy with three last names, right? And everyone tells me how much I'm like both my grandfathers. My grandfather Curtis, mom's dad, I spent my summers with him in North Georgia. So he and my dad and my brothers are like the men that I like to really model myself after. When I say model, but I mean they were men, strong black men, and I love them to this day. And my older brother is right now battling cancer. We lost our brother Jeffrey a few years ago with cancer, so I'm sending prayers and warm thoughts to him and trying to figure out how I can get back home to Georgia. But that's it comes from that this connection. So when I was raising my boys, they are men now. Curtis George Jr. and Cole. Curtis is a musician that travels the world. Cole is a sheriff's deputy in Sonoma County. So I've raised two good men. That being said, with I miss my boys every day. Junior is so much like his dad, and black men. I was talking with a few of the men in at San Quentin yesterday, and I'm really that yesterday has affected me. It stays with me. I'm one of these people that I'll be reflecting on this for several days. So it'll be part of my presentation tonight and tomorrow. The journey in San Quentin yesterday. When my boys were younger, and I was working with ABC down here in Los Angeles, I would bring my boys with me, and I always try to keep a safe environment for them. However, that being said, I wanted them to experience life. And we were going to a 7-Eleven on Hollywood Boulevard, I believe it was. And I've always said to the boys, hey, there's no stranger once you say hello. And my two sons, I'm about to cry, think about this story, project, but there was a person outside that was hungry and not prompted by me. My boys go, Dad, can we feed him? I said, of course we
Mm.
can. I said, now, do you want me to go? He says, no, no, can I do it, Dad? This is my older son. He took his own money, went up to the man. Of course, I'm standing there, so I make sure that's going to happen with my son. Not that I'm prejudging. Just if he was walking up to a man in a suit and tie, I'd still be close to make sure, you know. So my sons go up. They talk to the gentleman. They give him money, and it just and that's the way I'm so proud of both my children. They're men now, grown men. Junior is 30. My baby Cole is 28 with his second child on the way. So that connection, I feel like we have to share that with folks. We have to share that with our children. We have to. You don't. You're not born a racist, a bigot, a sexist. You're not born with that. Those things are learned qualities. So if we teach our children these good qualities, you know, be open to new adventures. I think they can grow up strong and healthy and happy. Yeah, does that answer it? I know I went down a lot of different avenues with that. It's just that black men need strong black men.
Mm-hmm.
Men need strong men, so that we
Mm-hmm.
can change these wrongs in the world that men have forged. And I'm saying that from my gut.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so men
Yeah.
have to lead the change, the corruption that we have brought to the world.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. You're. I can see that the impact of going to the prison yesterday. Is definitely is affecting you and making and encouraging you to think about the value of connection, the importance of connection. I'm going to use the word love because I think we share that
I
the
yes, we do.
importance of the importance of love, and how your young boys, your kids were able to share love with this person. And like you said from the beginning, they saw him as human.
As human, exactly.
He's a human being, and we all have our challenges. We don't know what has created the situations that we find ourselves in. We all make mistakes.
We do. Yes, we
We
do.
don't. We've been indoctrinated or enculturated based on our upbringing,
Hmm.
our programming,
Hmm. Where you're
and
from,
where
who,
you're
all,
from.
yeah,
All
it's
of these factors.
all those factors. It's
And
wild.
and you said something that's really practical and important. We can see that, and when you, like you said, with your boys, you still want to be there. You also still want to be acknowledged that, okay, I want to make sure things are okay. I can still see the someone else's humanity, and
We
also be a little cautious, being
right,
careful.
right.
There's nothing wrong with that, because we don't know. Again, a person could be in a situation where they're really hurting inside, and the way that they deal with that pain is they act out in harmful ways to others.
Yep.
It's not that you think that something is wrong with them. You can still see their humanity and still love them, but also be like, yeah, I don't know all of the factors that are influencing a person's reaction or response to a situation. So I wanted to make sure I say that, because I think sometimes, people like you and I who talk about love all the time, and who want to see more love in the world. Some people may think, "Oh, you all are just naive." Well, not quite naive. It's just because it's an aspiration. I think
Exactly.
it's a it's a desire that to work towards. I can still be
Yeah.
mindful of the possibility that that love may not be received, or it may
Yes.
not be given back to me, but it doesn't mean that I have to stop trying to love.
Right on. Right on. As we say in the AME church, preach, preach. You know what I'm saying? Like, bring it. Amen. Right. I witness that. It's very it's a wild thing. Like, I you mentioned in the bio earlier that I run this program in Marin City. It's 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 a change of an area. Marin City is the historically black part of Marin County. Marin County is one of the most wealthy counties in the country. It's still a very there's problems there. Um, Folks want to think of it as a utopia. However, there's so many. It's like either you're rich, you're poor. There's very little in the middle, right? I mean,
Mm.
it's an interesting thing. So, in Marin City, we've created this garden program where we got the kids coming. I'm trying to bring 4-H back to this part of the county. I'm also wanting to make sure when 4-H comes in that it's culturally relevant to the Black and Hispanic students, the Black, Brown, the Asian students. I don't want to just be one of these old colloquial type things where the white dudes are telling us that, hey, here's how farming is. Here's what. And when you think about farming in this beautiful country, I love America. Um, it's a lot of the farming was done by Black folk in the South, Mexican folks in the West, right? The Asian population that was brought into both parts of the country. So, the farm industry was built on our backs. So what I'm trying to do is what we're trying to do. It's not always about I, it's a we. It's what we're trying to do is get our children and young people to realize how connected to this land we truly are, right? Because this that red clay, as Dr. King said in Georgia, ran red. It was red, and it ran redder with the blood of Black folk because we tried to overcome that struggle. So, and the same thing out here in the West Coast with the people that were brought up from Mexico or brought over from China and Asia. Um, so I want to tie them back to that. And one of the things that we have learned, and when we talk with educators across the country, I've been doing a lot of interviews lately with people, how different school is post COVID,
Mm.
how that 2.5, 3 years that children didn't have that social and emotional learning. They didn't, they were out of school. They were learning through this computer thing. So a lot of these children are acting out because they had no boundaries. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the parents are acting out because we forgot our boundaries. We forgot. So as a movement, this what we're doing here, sharing this love, we've got to remind moms and dads that you are the biggest and best teacher for those babies.
Mm-hmm.
You are the best role model for those babies. We've got to know, we've got to share with people that love. We've got to share that uncomfortable so that it can become comfortable. Um, you know, again, I love my two boys. I miss them. Junior and I, for whatever reason, going back to the good life, right? I met this gentleman yesterday who's incarcerated, super intelligent black man. His father's on the East Coast. He's a police officer. His dad's a police officer, and he's incarcerated. So I asked him, "So are you and Dad in touch?" And he goes, "No, I haven't talked to him in a long time." And I shared with him how the estrangement with my son breaks my heart every day. And I call, I text, I reach out to my son every week just to make sure those lines can be. I do things that just to know that, hey, Dad loves you. Whatever you're going through, when you're ready, Dad's going to be here, right? Um, so I shared with this gentleman yesterday, and I'm calling him a gentleman because this man has earned his college degree behind bars. He's talking to children when they come in. These kids, he shares his message of, had I known then what I know now, what I would have done differently. And that's a big thing to say. If I knew then what I know now, what I would have done differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that twice because I say that same thing to myself. If I could talk to Curtis at 22, what advice would I give him? I go, if I knew then what I know now, now I do. So I do it differently. If that makes any sense, right?
Yes.
So I shared with him, I said, look, I want to reach out to your dad and let him know that we talked. And he goes, really? I go, yes, I want to do that. So I shared with him, I shared with the people at San Quentin how he, with their permission, can get in touch with me or share with his mom so that I can let her know her kid's healthy. Her son is this. How positively he affected me. And I want to reach out to his black father and say, bruh, I know he's behind bars. I know he, may have disappointed you. This man still loves you. My son is not behind bars. I wish I could see him, but however, I can't because he's not there. So black man to black man, reach out to your baby. I'm not judging you. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just sharing with you that I miss my baby every day, although he's a 32-year-old man and he chooses not to see dad. Your son wants you in his life. So if that makes any sense, we've got to. So I reach out to my brothers. I reach out to when I say brothers, I'm not just talking about my biological brothers. I'm talking about my brothers. Say, yo, let my son know how much I love him because he's not taking my calls. He takes yours. So, anyway, if that makes any sense, we've got to use that extended family as Ms. Clinton has said, it takes a village, and this is a huge village. So I'm reaching out to my village members to say, help me bridge that gap with my son. So once that happens, I think my life, as great as it is, will get even better because Curtis Jr. and I traveled the world together. I took him to Australia, I took him to Europe. We've done things and I'm like, wow, what went wrong in this relationship? Because I learned so much from that boy. I called him a boy, and I said that not because I'm calling him in a derogatory way, because black men don't like to call each other boy. We don't like to be heard. I don't like that word, boy. But when he was a boy, when he was before 13, we traveled to New York, Junior and I, and his idol, his musical idol, was Charles Mingus. So we had a chance to see Mingus's band. Of course, Mr. Mingus is gone. However, his wife still led the orchestra, so Curtis got a chance to meet her and share how his love of Mingus. And then, he's an incredible musician, plays any stringed instrument. So we're at the Guggenheim Museum. I love museums, right? I mean, it just like, growing up in the South, growing up in Conyers, Georgia, never been to a museum. Go to New York, I learn about museums, Broadway, ballet, all these things, right? So Junior and I at the museum, at the Guggenheim, we're walking that spiral all the way up top. and we're in an area with sculptures. And I said, son, out of all the art, the one I like the least is sculpture. And this little 12-year-old boy looks at me and he goes, Dad, to me, that's the most incredible. And I'm like letting him talk. He says, think about that sculpture you're looking at. And that artist, whatever he or she saw, they had to see that in that block. They had to see that in that stone. They had to see it in that wood and then move all the stuff out of the way so that could come forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I reached down, I picked him up, and I just held him in my arms, and I said, thank you for teaching me.
Mm-hmm.
So every day now, when I see a sculpture, I have a whole totally different perspective on that art, right? On that particular style. I'm like, you get this block of whatever it is, clay, rock, wood, and you have to see that in there to move all the stuff out of the way. And I'm like, oh my God, that was brilliant, son. Anyway, and I get the same from my baby boy, Cole, the police officer, the sheriff's deputy. And I remember before he decided to do that, he was like, he'd ask my advice. I said, son, you are going to be your own man. You have your own code of ethics and morals. And he's just beautiful. And he says, Dad, this is the way I think I can help our community. He says, I want to lead the way in this, the way policing should be done. And he's incredible. So I spent the day Monday with he and his son. I got to tell you, brother, I was so overjoyed. I love that Stevie Wonder song, Overjoyed. And that's how I felt. I still feel that. I feel that glow thinking about my son and my grandson. And we cooked together. My grandson loves mac and cheese. And so we made macaroni and cheese on Monday. And he's like, Pop, Pop. Wow, Pop, Pop, this is great. So anyway, so I'm a happy brother. I'm living this good life. And I hope your podcast listeners and viewers are enjoying this. And I hope we are able to educate, motivate, and inspire them to be happy and love filled.
Yeah, this is great, Curtis. You said several things there. I want to try to draw out here,
Okay.
and I think the important thing you keep coming back to is love and connection, and I'm really happy that you're saying these things about the importance of connection between, in your case, between father and son, and the attention that young men we don't tend to get, and I think there is a moment that we need to have and really come to terms with young men, young boys now. Like, hey, you know, how do we as adult males be role models for these young folks? How do we share with them that being a loving, kind, and tender person is just as manly as being rough and tough? That's great too.
Right on.
But I think that having that loving connection is an important thing, and I really love hearing that affection that you have for your children, and also how you are encouraging that affection with others, encouraging us to be more affectionate with each other, love each other, and from that space, we don't know what's possible. All kinds of things are possible as a
Amen.
result of that. And when we open ourselves to each other, in your case with your children and with your younger son here, you open yourself to him, and there's an opportunity to learn something, to gain another insight, another perspective. Now, if you can have that with your children, imagine we're doing that with other adults. When we
Yes.
allow ourselves to open ourselves up to each other, we open the door we open the door and the possibility of gaining some insight from them as they begin to share and explore their perspective and their view. And for me, I think that your son was able to do that because he felt like, oh, I can do this with my pops without getting yelled at, or I feel a loving connection there that I feel a receptivity there that I can express myself and share my thinking, and knowing that he has an open ear and willing to take my perspective on. That's a big lesson for all of us. in this
Yeah,
world, right?
I have to remind myself of that too constantly, right? It's just, yeah, to stay in the moment, be present, um, and go from there. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, being receptive and open to others. We don't have to agree with everything, but just be like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. We
true.
never know what wisdom or what knowledge someone is going to drop.
Amen.
And it's so beautiful. Another thing that you, when you first started talking about this, I think several things that you brought there, I want to acknowledge, and maybe we can unpack these two, is
I'm all
um,
yours.
the importance of connecting with the land and getting folks who have, in a way, distanced themselves from the land. And how do you reconnect them with the land? And I think food is such an important piece of that puzzle. It's like getting your hands dirty in nature, but also recognizing that, hey, this is sustenance. This is
Amen.
something that I can consume, that I'm building this relationship with nature, with the natural world. And there's this reciprocity, particularly with farming, which is amazing.
Yes.
Way
Yes.
to really learn how we are all a product of nature. We are all an expression of this, our substance, our sustenance. This food that we're going to consume becomes molecules in our bodies,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
ultimately the cells and tissues in our body that allows us to function,
Right.
and building that connection, and what we get when we're out in nature itself, not just the reciprocity of getting food, but just being in nature, observing and connecting with the soil, all of those benefits. That's such a powerful thing. Can you say any more about that, or would you like to say
I
anything
would
about
love
that?
to. As I mentioned earlier, I'm speaking tonight to the librarians, and I leave tomorrow for Las Vegas, and I'm part of the Healthy Meal Summit in Las Vegas Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And a lot of people are coming in from around the world for this event, and it goes back to work I did with Ms. Obama. She is a hero. Michelle
Amen.
Obama is truly a hero, not just for Black folk, Black women, Black men. She is a hero to women, to men, to people around the world. And her program, Move to School, was really the spark for a lot of these things. And I'm doing a keynote speech. I'm doing a lot of things with these school nutritionists from all across the country and around the world. I'm also hosting a food justice conversation. And so I've been talking with folks the last few weeks, really trying to, because these are terms that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago. We have the language now. We have the tools to speak about these inequities that we have suffered through 500 years of the time that we've been brought across the world in those the hulls of those ships. So during in the food justice seminar, one of the things that I really want to point out is that to truly bring justice with food, it starts with the access to land. And as you said a little earlier, talking about we've moved away from the land. We as Black people, we as those founders, those builders of this company, we get farther and farther away from that. And the farther away from it we get, the farther away from our food sources and all those things we are. So for us to get back to that healthy lifestyle, we've got to get back to that soil. I'm not saying everyone has to go become a farmer. However, it would be great to see people growing some food that they control. If you grow your food, you know what's in it, you know how it's prepared, you know how to prep it, all those things, right? I use no chemicals in my gardens. We're not certified organic because that's a very expensive process to go through.
Yeah.
However, you think about our ancestors. My granddaddy was a great organic farmer, and he didn't know he was an organic farmer, right? He was
Yeah.
a fucking, excuse my language, he was a farmer. He
Mhm.
was a farmer. And that's what I want to be, a farmer. I want to feed people. At work, I'm a chef, Chef Curtis Aikens. At my heart, I'm a cook because cooks feed people,
Mhm.
right? Chefs run a kitchen. Chefs make sure stuff is safe. Chef make sure it gets out. Well, when I'm cooking, I'm feeding folks, right?
Mhm.
That's one of the things I love about Chef Jose Andres. His vision, his world kitchen is something I admire. That's something I wanted to do when I was a kid. I thought, wow, we got to feed the world, right? And he's doing it. It's just, and I know so many chefs that travel with him, and I'm just I'm glad to be in a profession that truly feeds people. One of the reasons I'm hoping that Ms. Harris, Kamala, is elected is because she's a person who understands food. She knows that the difference in whole food and not that I mean, like everyone, I drop into McDonald's every now and then. I'll get a French fry or chicken nugget every now and then, but that's not what I want to sustain myself on is chicken nuggets and French fries.
Mm-hmm.
We got to have those whole foods to get a whole body, a whole life going. So, access to land is a big part of the whole thing about being bringing food justice to the world. Access to water, access to clean air. All of these things are part of food and social justice that we've got to have and bring to people. So these vacant lots around the cities, let's grow food on them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing for me. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I hope that
Yeah.
helped you with that. Did that? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
I,
Oh, yeah. I like that because with reconnecting with the land like that, even if you're saying like even if you're not going out and being a farmer, but at least having some awareness, some sensitivity. I think
yeah,
even just seeing it, if you're in your neighborhood and you see gardens, you see farms, you get to
see
see
it.
where the food comes from, see food as a whole thing versus, like you said, ultra processed food is the thing that's causing a lot of harm, physical ailments.
Exactly. I mean, when
Eh,
you think about it, right? As our culture, that after church dinner on Sundays. Remember those days back
oh
in the
yeah.
I mean, everybody was there. My mama cooked the Sunday. We get up, go to church, come home, and there was I don't really know how many courses, right? Back in the day, we didn't count courses. We just said it's a plate, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Right.
know it was a different course. It's a plate. I'm gonna fix yourself a plate, baby. I remember
Right.
that.
Oh
Fix a
yeah.
plate. Take your grandma a plate. She didn't say take her 7 courses. She said take your grandma a plate. And when we as Black people, as we elevate, right? We elevate our lifestyle. We elevate the things we're leaving behind some of the things that made us this strong family unit, and that was our connection to the land. My father, when we were growing up, he would grow a pig one year, right, and then he'd grow a cow the next year. So, and then he'd take it to social circle and have it processed, and then that meat would come back. We had it in the freezer we had enough for a year, right? While the
Mm-hmm.
other one and the beef, so it rotated back and forth. So we had a connection to that baby cow when he bring it home. We'd have to raise that cow to get big enough to go. And the same thing with the pig. So we had that connection with our food. And Dad said, "This ain't a pet. This is going to be on the table, right?" So we have to learn those things, right? We had a garden where we grew the okra, the carrots, the cabbage, all those things in the backyard, right? And we've gotten away from that. One of the things too, as a people, again, as we've elevated, we kept that diet. We eat the saturated fats. We eat those things. However, we're not working outside like we used to, right? So that's why we've got to go to the gym. Or we got to do this, do that. One of the things that I really have fostered in the last few years is like learning portion control, right? You go out to a restaurant, they give you a portion this big. What I'm trying to do is one of my advices to folks to live this healthy, good life. When you go to a restaurant, unless you're down at one of those 5-star, Michelin star places where you get these small portions, I usually get half my meal packed up to go right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pack it to go. And many times, especially if we're in New York City, because that food, I haven't touched it. If I see someone that's hungry, they get that food. And I share with them. I share the story like, okay, I get half my food packed. This has not been touched by my hands. No forks have touched it. If you want it, it's yours, young brother, or whomever I'm giving it to. So it's things like that when we talk about spreading love, sharing joy. We've got to do that. I mean, again, I'm off on a deep end, Roger, because I'm thinking about these brothers I saw yesterday, and I'm thinking about people that I want to feed tomorrow, and how we go about doing that. So, yeah, we've got to be connected to this land because it's interesting. I think about when end of life come, how do I want to, do I, um, am I buried? Am I this? Am I that? And I learned recently about that there is a way to give your body so you become composted.
Mm-hmm.
I think that may be the process I go to because we go back to the earth. And it's where we come from, right? So
Mm-hmm.
again, at 65, I got more years behind me than in front of me. So these are things that I do need to consider and think about so that after I'm not here, that decision has already been made. So my children or my wife won't have to do that. So
Hmm.
I know I'm putting a lot out here, Rod. Forgive me for going that way, but
No, it's all good. I
uh,
love it. For me, it's one big thing I wanted to share with you is, for this podcast, that's what I like about it. It's just a casual conversation, and I think that whatever comes to mind and that triggers you to think about something that's important and relevant. For one,
right.
I like to listen to podcasts like that. I like to listen to people speak organically and really share from the heart what they're feeling, and I can see it. I can see how your passion and your passion for love, or passion for people and caring about people, and I think that that's what's important about what you're saying. For me, one of the things that's important about what you're saying, as you talk about land and food, and I think seeing food for
Yeah,
what it is, seeing
yes,
real food, exposing yourself to real food is may
yeah.
increase the likelihood of you eating whole real foods
Over,
again,
I love it.
because you're connected to it. You see it
Yeah.
again. Even if you're not growing it, you get to see it, and you see it around you, and maybe you get inspired to maybe the next time you go to the store and you see those ding dongs. I don't even know if they still have
Right.
that, and you be like, "What is that?"
What
There's
is that? Right. That, well,
that's not.
they do still have. Another thing too is people. I one of my favorite plants is the sunflower. Right.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Hmm.
look at sunflowers and they're so happy, and that sunflower, when you grow those in your yard, your garden, they have this. It's like they have this whole little life system around them. You know, um, the bees come, the birds come, the squirrels come. Everybody comes to the sunflower because they want to eat those seeds, right? What
Hmm.
I like doing is I collect those seeds, I save some for next year to plant, and I can also roast them. So there's a food source out of all that beauty. So, and
Hmm.
that's something I love to share with folks when you start looking
Yeah.
at different plants. They're not just beauty. There's a food source, whether it's for me as a human or for some critter that comes around it. So I hope folks that are listening to us and seeing us today, the next time they see a sunflower, they think about that whole little system that's around that beautiful sunflower. You know,
Hmm.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Right. It's different kinds of food. There's that physical food, physiological food, and then there's that food, that aesthetic food, that food
Yes,
that's, it's good. That beauty is a good thing. Beauty and
yeah,
creates a sense of awe, and it creates a sense of presence in us, a kind of wonder,
yeah.
that
I
we
love
can
that kind of
that we
wonder. Yes,
yeah, that we can take for granted. But that's why beauty is such an important thing. I like how you connected that beauty, that experience of something beautiful, and as well as it being a sustenance for
amen.
our functioning, so we
Yes,
can function in this body.
we got to feed that soul.
Yeah. So,
The eyes, the nose, the mouth, all these things, the ears, all those senses, the touch. I tell people, like, I don't know if I like the word expert. I don't, and I definitely don't like the word master. Right, like masters of education. I always have a hard time when I say that. A master gardener. I'm like, who brought these terms up? So
right.
I always dispel that when I hear that, right? I have an education, a higher education degree, but I'm not a master. I'm a black man. How can I use that term master in any way
Hmm.
that's good?
Yeah.
That's my thought there. So when I think about this learning, this teaching, this sharing, and it all comes from that love center, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm enjoying the heck out of this day. So getting a
Yeah.
chance to really just come from the heart with it, the hip, as they might say.
Right.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
this is a beautiful conversation, brother, and
Yeah.
um, I want to
Yeah.
make sure I help you share this message with folks. I'm sorry,
Awesome.
I get a
No,
little
it's all
emotional.
good.
I get a
There's
little
nothing wrong with that, man. Me too. You know what? I want to bring up a few more things here
sure,
before
sure.
we sign off that you brought up, and well, I'll start with this one first because it's just so. When you were talking about growing up, and I think you subtly said it, but I think it's something that is so crucial to a good life. Because I grew up in the Southeast, small farm town, and I've had that similar experience on after church on Sunday, especially when I was younger. The dinner, I loved it, man. A revival.
I
You go
mean,
to revival,
yes.
all the
Oh,
food and
oh,
people are together. And I
yeah,
think this thing that you're saying, that breaking bread and being together in community, sharing food together is such a
It's huge.
Big part of the good life for me is to,
Amen.
and I'm like you, I love to cook. I wouldn't call myself a chef, but I love cooking, and I
Good.
love cooking for people.
Yes.
And when I invite people over, or me and my partner, we do something together, and her family is here, and I'm in the kitchen like the whole time. They're like, "Are you gonna come and talk with us?" I'm like, "I'm loving this.
I'm
The
in
fact
heaven,
that
man.
I can make exactly in heaven right now, making this food, and then we all get to sit around and share that food together, and
Right.
share each other's company and space. That is such a
I get you.
big piece of living a good life,
It's that thing, it's that thing, when people say I feel you, right?
right?
And trying to share that with folks, they don't get it. It's like that. I feel you. I feel that, right?
Yeah.
Mm, that brings up an interesting thing, right? When you talk about feel, right? And I didn't want to hijack it. You were going to ask some more
No,
questions.
no, yeah, that's it. That's good. I just want to wait, share some. Yeah, if you have more to elaborate on that.
So it's like when you feel something, we talk, and I loved your pre-interview questions that you sent out, and they gave me a chance to really think of really a lot of things that went on, and I want to share with folks about feeling, right? And we talk to athletes, we talk to people in different fields, and one of the things that's interesting, like Tiger Woods is an incredible golfer. He's the GOAT, right? And I remember listening to Tiger talk. I had a chance to meet him years ago in Las Vegas, and Tiger has this way, and he talks about feel the putt, how it feels in your feet, all those things, right? And then we talked to baseball players. I had a chance years ago to meet the great Mickey Mantle, and we talked, and Mickey. I mean, he gave me some things that just really blew my mind. I had a chance to meet and talk with Muhammad Ali, Darryl Strawberry. Like I said earlier, I was like the Forrest Gump of the food world, the people that have crossed my path and the things they shared with me. And a common theme is how it feels in your body, how it feels in certain parts of you is a part of being good at something. And
Hmm.
understanding those feelings help you elevate to being great at something, right? And getting uncomfortable for a while to make it feel comfortable is how you become great.
Hmm.
I share this story with a lot of people, especially our young athletes. When I met Mickey Mantle, I was living in New York. We're going. He had the restaurant. Well, he was like the figurehead. He was his backers, and Mickey is at Central Park South. So I go in the restaurant, and Mickey Mantle, I had a book under my arms, and he says to me, "Hey kid," he points at me, and I'm like, he goes, "Yeah, you come sit with me," right? So the girlfriend I was with at the time, we sat down with Mickey Mantle for about 3 hours,
Hmm.
just chopping it up, right? And after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, he says to me, "So Curtis, I've been doing all the talking, asking the questions, right? I'm like, I went Mickey Mantle, right? This is the days before cell phones, so I couldn't call my dad and say, Dad, I'm with number seven. I'm with, you couldn't do that back then, right? He said, so what would you like to ask me? And I'm like, okay, I'm with Mickey Mantle. So I said, so what were you thinking when you went to the plate, went up to bat? And he goes, wow, that's a good question. He goes, and he thought for me, and he goes, Curtis, when I went to the plate, there was a zone about that tight. And if the ball was in that zone, it was gone.
Hmm.
And I'm like, wow. And then he shared, he says, now, and I could have been a really good baseball player if I'd stayed in that zone. I could have been, if I just locked that zone in, right? And then he said, but I wanted to be great. So I had to expand my zone. And then he went on to explain that hitting is situational. There's a man on second, no outs. A man on all these different situations. And I'm like, my goodness. And that to me was one of those metaphors of life, right? That you could go, okay, I can be good if I stay in my lane. I can be safe if I stay in my lane. However, if I want to be great, if I want to be outstanding, if I want to be inspirational, if I want to be a force of change, positive change, I got to be uncomfortable. I got to
Hmm.
expand my zone. I've got to grow,
Hmm.
and that's the whole thing. It's like you got to grow. You got to be able to hit that ball. If you got a man on third base, you got to get him home. That ball low and outside, you got to be able to drive it or foul it off or whatever. And I was like, my Lord, and you can't see it on the camera, but I get the chicken skin, right?
Hmm.
By the time I spent with him, right? And then so I try to remember that. I try to remember that when I'm feeling uncomfortable. And I try to feel it even and remember that even more so when I'm feeling comfortable. Because if when you start feeling comfortable, I feel I'm standing still. I'm not moving forward. Not that I want to be so uncomfortable I'm not getting anything done. It's just that I want to grow. I like being asked to do things that aren't in my normal zone, right? I've got to
Mhm.
learn more. And I had never really thought about sharing my insights on food justice until I was asked to host this. And I'm like, okay, I got to start compiling my thoughts. How does it feel to me? What am I doing to create food for everyone in my area? And I go, okay, I'm doing these things not because I was asked to. I've been doing these things because that's what my father did. That's what
Mhm.
his father did. That's what my mother did. That's what her mother did, right? It is a part of who we are as Black Americans, as as ancestors that were torn from their homeland. We were, we are, and always will be a strong tribe. So
Mhm.
that's what we do. That's we bring food justice. You think about what Coleman Young did in Detroit when he created those garden spaces, all those vacant lots, right? So because of his work, the United States government was like, oh, we're shamefaced, so we got to create this corporate extension services to help everybody because that black dude in Detroit is shaming us, right? So anyway, so that's what food justice is about. And a lot of the things that have happened in this country have been led by people of color, primarily black folks, right?
Mhm.
We're the tip of the spear. We're the ones that crack it open so that everybody else can come flooding through. Whether the people in power want to believe that or not, we are the force of change in America. And our numbers are dwindling. However, our strength is elevating. So,
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, all of that. I love that story. And you're touching on so many things, so many pieces of the puzzle that I like to draw out about living a good life, and being uncomfortable
yeah.
facilitates growth if
Yes.
you're open to it.
Yes.
And if you're open to it, if you're receptive to it, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Even these conversations,
Yeah.
yeah, we're having this fun, free flowing conversation, but hopefully somebody's, one of us say something that you may not, you're not used to hearing, and it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but you're open and you're receptive, like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think about that. I
Right.
didn't
Right.
think about that. I say, just about food, for instance, like, yeah, I maybe I should think about this whole, not should, but maybe it would behoove me to think about whole foods and
Right.
what is my, I don't have any connection to the land. That's okay to feel uncomfortable about that, because it allows you to open yourself up to the possibility of something else. And that allows you to grow and to expand and increase the likelihood.
Yeah.
It increases possibilities for you in the choices that we make in the world based on our capacity to open ourselves up. And a lot of times, that's not a comfortable process.
It is
Growth is
not.
not comfortable, and that's
I know it
okay.
isn't for me. I know it isn't for me. I mean, even as I'm trying at 65, I'm still trying to learn. Two things really popping in my head as I'm hearing you, this back and forth, right? When we talk about growth, and as a gardener, as a farmer, as a person who's studied this stuff a lot, you put a plant in a small pot, it's going to limit its growth,
Yep.
right?
That's it.
So, and this metaphor we want to share with the folks listening and watching today is that if you want to be that big, stay in that small pot, right? As a little bitty boy, as a young boy, I always had this feeling that I was a citizen of the world. And if I'm a citizen of the world, America is my neighborhood, right?
Hmm.
So when my kids were young, we had a house in Atlanta, we had a house in California, and I really tried to share with them and with everyone in my life circle that I'm as close to Atlanta by plane as I am to Los Angeles by car. It's the
Mm.
same. In fact, I'm quicker to Atlanta than I am to LA, right? And they didn't. No one, people, a lot of folks couldn't get it. Now they're starting to understand. 25, 30 years later, people understand, oh, yeah, I can hop on a flight and go to Atlanta, if it's affordable. So the idea of a pot, be a big pot, get a big pot so you can expand. I want the house that I'm in. right? I need a
Mm-hmm.
house that I can expand in, right? The other thing that I want to share too is that when we talk about food, access to food, and we talk about our history as Black people, both from the Carolinas and North Georgia, and the fact is that people that were forced into slavery and were forced to bring over here, our ancestors, right? Nowadays, the handcuffs that master is the lack of food.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand that as Black people, we need to fight this fight that everyone have access to food, because lack of land, lack of food, lack of access, that those are the chains that are binding us now,
Mm-hmm.
right? We as a people, that's the movement that I really want us to start, that I'm really starting to push. Is like, okay, we got to have access to grow our food. We got to control our food. We can't have those big agri businesses force feeding us these GMOs, all these things. So I know I'm off a deep end here, uh, Roger, but I that's the slavery. Those are the chains that are binding us these days, and it's
Yeah.
killing us with diabetes, with heart troubles, all those things. Those are the binds. Those are the ways they're trying to control us now, is by having limited access to food.
Yeah. You know what? You're saying all of this and that, so I lived in Atlanta. I was at Georgia Tech for graduate school in chemical engineering. And in the middle of that, I had a whole big change and I got interested in medicine and health and well-being and wanted to focus my attention on that, and I got into naturopathic medicine. But during
Mm.
that time I was changing my diet because I grew up on a farm, and I
Right.
started changing my diet and looking and broadening my horizons about food. And a lot of the inspiration for me to want to do this was seeing all the suffering in my community, like the cardiovascular disease, obesity.
Yes.
I mean, obesity right now is really rampant, and this is 30 years ago,
Right.
um, uh, but it's still a major issue. And diabetes, of course. And you're right. The one thing that because I want to tie this into literacy. The
Amen.
one thing that I found in this analogy of the big pot, even though I was in graduate school when I grew up, I didn't read much. I was really good at math and science. I could read, but I wasn't really great at reading because I didn't read anything other than
Mm-hmm.
like my science textbooks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't read much anything outside of that. So my vocabulary was relatively small. So I had a small pot. And so, and I ate what I ate. It wasn't all bad. Luckily, because I grew up in a farm, it
Right.
was
We
a
had
lot
good
of it
food.
was great. But again, during that time, fast food was taking over. And a lot of us was like, oh, especially country folk, we like, we
Yeah.
don't want to be looked like country bumpkins. So we're going to start buying all this fast food and stuff like that so we can feel like we're a part of something, right?
Right.
And so that was that small pot. So and when I got to school and I finally started reading stuff outside of my academic stuff, and I started to expand my pot. I had to increase my vocabulary.
I
I began
love
to
it.
increase my understanding of the world, and increase the possibilities available to me. I'm like, oh, I can transform my life. I
Amen.
can be healthier. And so for me, that justice that I think our ancestors who fought when you're enslaved, they fought to increase their literacy. They
Yes.
knew that if they can understand language,
Yes.
and if they can increase their vocabulary and learn how to play this language game, they have a better understanding of the world, and that's going to open up possibilities within the society that they live in. So expanding that pot, I think there's a direct relationship between literacy, educating ourselves and learning, and food justice.
Amen.
Because a lot of times we are engaged in habits that we're just accustomed to. And this generation, a lot of them live in the fast food
World. Yes.
world.
Yes.
And
Yes.
these children grow up in that world. That's all they
That's
know.
all they know.
But if they can expand their horizons, and I think through literacy and through the education that you're talking about, gardening, being with the land, learning the vocabulary of farming, learning the
Wow.
vocabulary of food,
Oof.
all of that is going to expand their capacity to live a much more a happier, a better life as a result of that.
Productive,
Does that make
thriving.
sense?
It makes total sense. And brother, it's like, and it's really, this is when I'm asked to host this food justice forum, is what really made me start thinking about what my feelings are and how I can articulate not learn, what I do when it comes to bringing about food justice. And you hit on so many things when we talk about obesity and the health of human beings. And yesterday, one of the questions I asked the people that run San Quentin is, what are we doing about diabetes in prison? They share it, right? So I do want to go back there, and I want to work with that kitchen staff, because we ate lunch, and the gentlemen that were the men that took us on the tour, the incarcerated gentlemen that were sharing with us, they said they love these tours because they get much better food when they have visitors come in. It kind of broke my heart in a way.
Mm.
So here we go, and on the ballot here in California, there's a thing about slavery, and I can't remember it off the verbatim. I sent my ballot in yesterday before leaving, but there's a thing about slavery, and I keep thinking how access to food, those are the chains. Access to land, those are the chains. And in Marin County is a huge county, small population. And here we are, we're having to come up with housing for people up and down the coast, right? And I'm like, well, can't we open up access to some of this land out there in West Marin? And they don't want to do it. I'm like, well, not every black person wants to live in a apartment building. Not every black person wants to live on the line that the train goes. Yeah, but I'm like, no, everyone, give people access to land. Give people access to spread out a bit. No, we don't need urban sprawl throughout the whole county. However, let's open up some of this land that white folks have held on to since they took it from the Mexicans 200 years ago. I really get fired up about this one, Broderick. It's like the unjust things that are still going on. So I'm sorry. I know I'm down that deep end, but
No, no, it's all good. We're coming to a close here, but
I
I've
don't want to
loved.
end. I don't want to
I
end.
know, right? I know. I know so much. I mean,
Oh
there's so
man,
many avenues to explore, and
yeah,
and there's so many things that were left unsaid. But I think we've said a lot here. I think there's so many places that I would love to go with you, and I think we can have this conversation again
again,
sometime.
yeah.
And
Can
I
I
think
add
that
one
there's.
before you go though?
What do
Because
you say?
can I add one more thing before you go?
Oh
Because
yeah, for absolutely. You're gonna have more to say, yeah, but I'm
you
just
touched on literacy, and as we said earlier in the opening, that I did not learn to read till I was 26. And that's one of the things that I try to share with as many people as I can. It's like, I didn't know how to read. Not that I had dyslexia or anything like that. I didn't get that foundation. So I
Mhm.
share with children all across the country when I'm speaking with school kids or whomever, or college kids or young people that want to become teachers. Is the fact is that, we all learn differently. And we have to take that into account when we are trying to convey information to people. So when I was in the master's program at Dominican, when I was in the master gardener program in Marin County, all these master things, I say to folks, I share this through these interview processes that I am a slow reader. What have you put in place to help me succeed?
Mhm.
To not yet have I been in a place where they said, well, we have these guardrails in for you. So what I say to them is that I'm going to figure it out for me. Once I figure it out for me, we need to make sure this is in place for the next me that comes into this program.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things I'm encouraging people to do. It's like, okay, I don't think I know it's hard to have phones in school buildings and all those things. I put that up just so people can see that. However, the technology inside these things can help children. So we have to really put up some safe guardrails for the child who can't read as well as the child sitting next to him or her or
Mhm.
they. So we've got to figure out ways to use this technology, however, but to not make it this disruption. So a lot of times today, like when I have text to read, I'll put it on my e-reader and I can read along with it. I can read a lot faster and my comprehension is better. My eyes aren't what they were 25 years ago. Like once I learned to read, I mean, I always had a book in my hands. I was reading from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to Reggie Jackson. I used to love to read about black athletes who had became business people and successful business people, right? I would eat that stuff up. Older I get, the less good my eyes are. So now I've transitioned to audiobooks. Like you, I want to expand my vocabulary. I want to expand my understanding of the world. So that's exposure is the key that I really want us to get to these black boys and girls, especially black boys, exposure to
Mhm.
positive influences in their life. I'm not a good man because I have 15 children. I'm not a great person because I, do that. I feel like I can become a great person if I share these values, this love, this kindness that came from God, my mother, my father, my ancestors, the shoulders we stand on, these 400-year-old shoulders that were crammed in those ships. That's who I am. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
bring forth when I come to my communities. Like every Black person that came before me, I am them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be their strength. The good, the bad, the great. I am part of all of that. And
Yeah.
that's what I want to bring to this world.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. I'm so happy that you brought that up. I think there's a lot of people in our community who are challenged with literacy and
Yes,
reading.
yes,
My father is illiterate.
mine
I have
was.
relatives who still can't read or who are challenged in reading, and some people just a slower reader, a slower processor, and it doesn't mean that they lack intelligence.
Amen.
And I think that this is so important, everyone, that even if, like for me, I'm not the fastest reader, I had to work really hard at it because I didn't read like, growing up very much at all. And I had to learn how to read, and it was uncomfortable reading.
Yes,
Now, getting a textbook, I can figure out how to do that because I had to, because I just love math and science so much. But I was intimidated by reading anything outside of that. And it
wow,
was very uncomfortable. But I
right.
had to kept pushing myself. I kept pushing myself and expanding that pot. I love that analogy.
I,
And expanding
that came
my
up because you and I were talking. I had never used that before, so that's you the inspiration for that. So,
I love it. And expanding that capacity. And I think to have a life well lived, I really do think it's important to have a vocabulary in our modern world
right,
that helps us navigate it. I look at life as a game. And
yeah,
if you want, that's one analogy. I'm not saying that life
I
is a
got,
game, but it's an
I follow you.
analogy. And if you understand the game, and literacy can help you better understand that game. And if you expand, I know it's a painful process for those
It
of us
is
who started off slow.
uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, definitely uncomfortable. And but you look at me today, I love it. I love reading. That's probably one of my favorite things to do
Yeah.
because I see the value. I know from my own personal experience, and you can probably speak to this as well,
Oh yeah.
is that how much of a game changer it was when you expand your knowledge, your understanding, your vocabulary so you can speak the world into existence
Exactly.
based on the things that you choose to do. Oh, there's an option. Oh, there's another option.
Right
Let me
on.
put these different options together. Let me be creative with those things and help me create a life for myself. I just
Wow.
think that though that is such a powerful thing.
It's
Um,
huge.
it's huge. I don't think
When
people understand how big it is.
it's like I tell folks, okay, before I learned to read, it was like looking at a blank black wall. Once I learned to read, the lights came on and
Right.
all those pictures right there, they popped up. And it's like it's when we go to church as little boys, we hear the preacher talk, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I had his impression of God's word. Once I was able to read, I could read God's word for myself. I
Mm-hmm.
could I could pray before, I could pray during, I could pray after. So God, please put your word on my heart, in my mind, in my soul. So from you, not from someone interpreting it to me. So that's a huge thing to be able to read the Bible for yourself, or the Quran, or the Buddhist Bible, or whatever the literature is, right? That so you can get those perspectives. And I love studying religions. Uh, I almost converted to Judaism a few years ago. And I spoke with this rabbi, and he says, Curtis, you're a good person. Just be you. Because God sees you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just be who you are. Like I'm at my sister Rochelle's house right now. Rochelle Hupton, beautiful Jewish woman from Washington State. Her kids call me Uncle Curtis. My kids call her Aunt Rochelle. That's how it is, right? So it's like God. The thing that I was getting to is that like true religion, they all intersect at one place, and that place is love.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I walk around wanting to spread love, because the God I love, whatever name that may be put on that God, is about love.
Yeah.
And he, she, they, it, lit comes out of me, right? So I share with folks. Say, well, what is God? Well, God's a black man with bald head. If I'm created in His image, right? Or God's a black woman with with a fro. If it's in create, my sister's created in God's image, right? So, it just this has been an incredible conversation. One of the things I want to go back to and touch on real quickly before we have to wrap it up. I know we're running along, but yesterday when we were at the prison and we were talking about the food, and one of the things I shared with the warden there, I got his card somewhere. We were talking about the food budget and that he has a huge budget for green beans. We buy all these green beans, and only maybe 60% of the men will eat the green beans. The rest of them, we throw away all these green beans. So if I could figure out a way, I said, well, two things. One, we got to find if those green beans taste good. We got to make them taste better. If they taste good, everybody will eat them. So I threw out one little quick thing that's going to help them make the green beans taste better. Whatever you all are doing with those green beans, start slicing up some potatoes and put it in. That starch going to make those it's going to raise that flavor profile on those green beans. What that simple thing, and then whatever fat you're using in there, try some olive oil or some an oil to give it a little more. Again, raising that flavor profile, and then whatever seasoning you use. Right? Let me hear how you're seasoning those green beans, because if we change the flavor, I guarantee you that percentage is going to go up. The other thing I shared with him, because he said, and I quote, the budget is $4 per meal per incarcerated person. And I said, Warden, I'm going to share something with you. One of the reasons I left the Food Network is because I had created a food system, a menu, a whole idea of feed your family of four on $4 per meal, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason I came with $4 is because $4 back then, that was, when you timed it out, that was what the food stamp allotment was, $360 or what it was per month, right? So feed your family of four on $4 a meal. I said, Warden, I would love to implement that here. We can create a menu plan to feed your incarcerated people for $4 per meal. If that's your budget, and it's going to be a healthy, nutritious diet, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to, like I was talking to the inmates yesterday, they were saying how, and at morning they'll get oatmeal, maybe they'll get a biscuit or whatever it is and a little patty link, and then at lunch they get either a bologna sandwich, peanut butter and jelly or something. I'm like, oh my Lord, is that's what we're eating? So it doesn't cost $4. Then at night it's like, and the food is undercooked or cooked wrong. So I'm like, okay, let me help you create better food for these human beings, because we want to treat people that are incarcerated like humans, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's one of the things. $4 per meal. I've created a menu that can feed people. So this idea of the handcuffs that are now food, we need to break those handcuffs and let everybody be free again.
Awesome. You're such the love exudes, man. I love it. I love how you love people, and that's what this is ultimately about for me, is having these conversations with thoughtful people who care about the world and have a perspective on a good life and what a meaningful life is all about. So before we close, I do want to ask some final words for you. How would you sum up what living well means to you?
Wow. Healthy, physically, emotionally, mentally, being healthy, being able to share that blessing with people that I love and meet. Living well is being able to experience all these beauties that are before us. Living well is not being afraid to speak your mind. Living well is being able to receive. Living well is being able to share. I think that's what it's like,
Mm. Wow, Curtis, you're amazing. Thank you so much. This has been a lovely conversation. I'm happy that we've met. Looking forward to many more conversations offline, and continue the beautiful work that you're doing in the world. You're an inspiration, and I hope the audience is inspired as I am by you. And yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure. And your audience, feel free to reach out, chef@curtisakens.net. Find me on social media. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.